Welcome to our explainer. Today we're going to dive deep into a really powerful section of Surah Al-Baqarah, looking at verses 126 to 150, and we'll be using the incredible commentary of Maulana Maududi to guide us through it.
So we're going to break this all down into 5 key themes. We'll start with the foundational prayers of Prophet Ibrahim, and we'll journey all the way to the establishment of the Muslim community as witnesses for all of humanity.
All right, let's get started. Our journey begins right at the very foundation of the faith, both spiritually and physically, laid by Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, at the Kaaba itself.
Okay, let's look at the wording here in Abraham's prayer. It's so precise, he asks for security and provision for Makkah, but notice how he adds that little qualification, those of them who believe. Now, Maududi explains that Abraham was actually remembering a lesson he'd learned from Allah before, that the divine promise of leadership doesn't include the unjust, so he is being careful. But Allah's response, well, it draws an even clearer line.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates that distinction. Allah gently corrects Ibrahim's caution and explains that worldly provision, sustenance or rizq, that's for everyone, believer and disbeliever alike. It is not a sign that you are divinely favored. But spiritual leadership or imama? That's a completely different story. That's a promise reserved only for the righteous. So the big takeaway here is you should never, ever mistake worldly success for divine pleasure.
Now, I want you to just picture the scene for a second. Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail are physically raising the walls of the Kaaba. This isn't just construction work. It's a deep, profound act of worship. And with every single stone they place, they're making this incredible, comprehensive prayer, not just for themselves, but for all the generations that will follow.
And their prayer really had 4 key parts. First, super simple and humble. They just ask for acceptance of their service. Second, they pray that they themselves can remain Muslims, meaning in a state of complete and total submission to God. Third, they extend that prayer to their future children, asking for a whole nation of Muslims to come from their lineage. And finally, they look way unto the future, and they ask for a messenger to be raised from that very nation.
And here it is, the fulfillment of that prayer. Maududi points out that this final part of their prayer was answered centuries later with the arrival of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. This establishes such a direct spiritual lineage, connecting the final prophet and the final message all the way back to the original patriarch of monotheism. It's beautiful.
This brings us right to our next section, which really gets to the core of Ibrahim's faith. And it's a concept that goes way beyond any kind of tribal label or historical group. It's really about a state of being.
So, what does it actually mean to be a Muslim? Maududi gives us this really powerful definition. It's someone who submits completely. When Allah commanded Ibrahim, submit, his reply was immediate. It was total. I have submitted to the Lord of the worlds. This act of submission, Islam, is presented as the universal religion of all the prophets, right from the very beginning.
And you can see how this path was so carefully passed down through the generations. Ibrahim taught his sons, then later his grandson, Prophet Yaqub, who you might know as Israel, give the exact same advice to his own sons from his deathbed. He asked them, "Who are you going to worship after I'm gone?" And they all confirmed their loyalty to the one God of their forefathers, Ibrahim, Ishmael, and Ishaq. It's just one single, unbroken chain of pure monotheism.
But right after establishing this amazing lineage, the Quran hits us with this really stark reminder. Your ancestry, it guarantees you nothing. Each soul is responsible for its own actions. And I love Maududi's point on this. The Quran uses the word earn for our deeds. Why? Because every single thing we do, good or bad, is something we earn for the hereafter. You can't just inherit salvation or ride on the coattails of your pious ancestors.
Okay, next, the Quran turns to address the claims of later communities, the ones who kind of partitioned this universal faith into different groups. And in response, it presents the true, universal nature of guidance.
So the verse directly lays out the claim that was being made at the time. Become a Jew or a Christian, and then you'll be rightly guided. That was the argument. And in response, the Quran offers this decisive and actually deeply logical takedown of that idea.
And the answer is just so simple and brilliant. Go back to the source. Follow the way of Abraham. Maududi points out the huge historical flaw in their argument. Think about it. How could Abraham have been a Jew or a Christian? He lived centuries before those religions even existed in the forms they were known. So the point is that real guidance isn't found in these later labels, but in the original, pure path of monotheism that Abraham followed.
And this, right here, is the declaration of the Muslim faith. To believe in God's guidance means you have to believe in all of his messengers, without making distinctions. Ibrahim, Moses, Jesus, all of them.
Maududi clarifies that if you reject even one of them, you're rejecting the single, consistent truth that they all brought. It's a call to move beyond your ancestral tribe to a universal submission.
We now arrive at one of the most significant moments in this entire passage. It's a physical, tangible shift that actually symbolized a huge spiritual transition, and that is the change of the Qibla, the direction of prayer.
So you have to understand, for about 16 or 17 months after the migration to Medina, the Muslims had been praying facing Jerusalem. Then, all of a sudden, the command comes down to turn and face the Kaaba in Mecca. And you can imagine, this prompted a lot of mockery and questions from objectors. But Allah reveals that this wasn't some random change. It was a profound test, and it was designed for a very great purpose.
You see, this change signified a formal transfer of spiritual leadership. The Muslim community was now being designated as the Ummah-e-Wasat, a term Maududi translates as a justly balanced nation. And this isn't just some fancy title, it's a role. They are meant to be a central model community, established to be witnesses over all of humanity.
So, why did this happen? Maududi explains the wisdom behind it beautifully. First, it was a test of pure loyalty, to see who would follow the Prophet no matter what, versus those who were stuck in their old habits. Second, it was designed to break prejudices, to free both the Arabs from their pride in the Kaaba and the Israelites from their attachment to Jerusalem. And third, it formally established the Kaaba as the new, independent, universal spiritual center for this final global community.
And that brings us to the final verses in our section, which confirm the truth of this new direction, and maybe more importantly, they outline the huge responsibilities that come with this new leadership role.
Wow, this is such a powerful statement. The Quran is saying that the scholars among the people of the book, they knew the truth of this. They knew the Kaaba was built by Ibrahim, their own patriarch, 13 centuries before Solomon even built the temple in Jerusalem. They recognized this fact as clearly as they recognized their own children, but some of them chose to hide that truth, all because of deep-seated prejudice.
And then, the Quran brings the focus right back to what really matters. Yes, you need a direction for the unity of prayer, of course, but the ultimate goal isn't to get into arguments about geography. The real objective, the real race, is towards everything that is good. Strive for righteousness. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are. Allah will bring you all together for judgment.
This new Qibla was a symbol of that leadership. It was a sign that God's favor upon this new community was being completed. Maududi explains that following this command was absolutely crucial, because any hesitation would have given their enemies a reason to argue that they weren't worthy of this leadership. So following it was a way of showing gratitude for this massive blessing and this immense responsibility.
And so we end with this question, which the verses really leave us to think about. The change of the Qibla wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a profound duty, to be appointed as a witness over humanity. What does that mean? It means you have to become a living proof, a walking, talking testimony to justice, to truth, and to submission, for all people and for all time. And the question that echoes down to us today is, how is that testimony fulfilled?